I was supposed to be home eating frozen pizza and watching basketball. That was the entire plan. I had already changed into sweatpants, put the pizza in the oven, and turned my phone face down on the kitchen counter. It had been a long week at work. 2 drivers had called out. One van had stopped working near Cleveland, and a customer had spent 12 minutes explaining why a late package had personally ruined his weekend. By Friday night, I wanted silence. Then Derek called. I answered and said, "No." He laughed. "You don't even know what I'm asking." "I know you. There's a house gathering near North Shore." "No. My co-worker rented this place with 2 other people. There are musicians, restaurant people, a few drivers from work." "No. You might meet someone." That made it worse. Derek kept talking while I pulled the pizza from the oven. He said I was 29 and already living like a retired man. I reminded him that retired people usually had savings and hobbies. He said I was missing the point. "Come for 1 hour," he said. "You always say 1 hour. And one day I might mean it." "You won't." "No, but you should still come." I stood in my kitchen staring at the pizza. I knew what would happen if I stayed home. I would watch the game, fold half the laundry, leave the other half in the basket, and answer Derek's messages during halftime. Then Saturday would arrive looking exactly like the previous Saturday. That bothered me more than I wanted to admit. "Fine," I said. 1 hour. Derek shouted like he had won something. I changed into jeans, a clean t-shirt, and a light jacket. Nothing that suggested effort. I drove across town telling myself I could leave at any moment. The house was worse than I expected. Cars lined both sides of the street. Music came through the walls before I reached the porch. Inside, people were packed into every room. Someone was laughing near the stairs. 3 people were arguing about local bands beside a coat rack. A man I had never seen before slapped my shoulder and welcomed me as though I owned the place. Derek appeared from the kitchen with a proud grin. "You came. I already regret it." "That means you're growing." Someone called his name from behind him. Derek pointed at me. "Don't leave." Then he disappeared into the kitchen. I checked the time. 58 minutes remained. I moved through the living room looking for a quiet corner, an open window, or any place where nobody would ask what I did for work. The music grew louder. A group near the couch began cheering about something I could not see. That was when I noticed her. She stood beside an open screen door leading to a narrow side porch. She held a cup she had barely touched and watched the room with the same expression I probably had. She was not moving with the music. She was not checking her phone. She was not trying to enter anyone's conversation. She looked like she was waiting for the right moment to disappear. I walked over before I could talk myself out of it. "You look like you've already planned 3 ways out," I said. She turned slowly and looked at me. "4," she said. "One involves climbing over a fence, so I'm saving it for an emergency." I glanced toward the porch. "How long did you promise to stay?" 1 hour. "When did you make that promise?" She checked the time on the wall behind me. 50 minutes ago, when I was younger and less informed." I laughed harder than the line probably deserved, mostly because it felt good to meet someone who understood the situation without needing an explanation. "I'm Seth." "Mira." The music jumped louder as someone opened the kitchen door. Mira tilted her head toward the porch. "Do you think it's safer out there?" "Unless the fence plan starts early." We stepped outside. The porch was narrow, with 2 old chairs and a small metal table between them. We sat with enough space to make it clear neither of us was trying too hard. Through the screen door, I could still see people moving around, but the noise was softer. Mira asked what I did. "I'm a dispatcher for a delivery company." "So you spend all day telling people where to go?" "Mostly I spend all day asking why they aren't where I told them to go." She smiled. "That sounds exhausting." "It depends. Some days I'm tracking 6 vans, finding replacement drivers, answering customer calls, and changing routes because traffic decided to ruin everything." "And you're good at it?" "I think so." She studied me for a second. "Do you like your life, or are you just good at managing it?" That question landed harder than I expected. Most people asked whether I liked my job. That was easy. I could talk about schedules, drivers, and the satisfaction of fixing a bad route. She had asked something else. "My life is fine," I said. That wasn't the question. I looked through the screen door. Derek crossed the living room carrying a bowl of chips and talking to someone. "I guess I manage it well," I said. "Work, rent, groceries, laundry. Everything gets handled. And the parts that aren't tasks? I keep meaning to get to those." Mira nodded like she understood. "I had the opposite problem," she said. "I kept changing places. New jobs, new towns, new people. It looked like movement, but sometimes I was repeating the same thing in different rooms. Where did you live? A few places. New Mexico, Oregon, Colorado, North Carolina. That's more movement than I've had in my entire adult life. I wanted to know who I was when nobody around me already had an opinion. There was more behind that sentence, but she did not offer it, and I did not push. She seemed to notice. We stayed on the porch longer than either of us had promised. At one point, Derek opened the screen door, saw me talking to a woman, raised his eyebrows with ridiculous approval, and backed inside before he got a clear look at her. Mira missed it completely. When she finally stood, she checked the time and said, "I failed." At leaving, I stayed 9 minutes past the hour. That's serious. I'll need recognition. I almost asked for her number. Instead, I hesitated long enough for the moment to pass. She gave me a small smile, said goodnight, and left through the side gate. I stayed another 20 minutes, mostly because leaving right after her would have looked obvious to Derek. When I got home, the pizza was cold and the game was nearly over. I had just set my keys on the counter when my phone lit up with a message from a number I did not know. I stayed 9 minutes past the hour. I expect recognition. Before I could answer, a second message appeared. This is Mira. In case you meet several women planning fence escapes. I stood alone in my kitchen, smiling at my phone. Then I typed back. For the next few days, Mira and I messaged without making a big deal out of it. She sent short comments about places around town, mostly to see whether I would defend Chattanooga like a tour guide. I told her about a coffee shop near the river that stayed quiet even when the rest of the area got busy. On Tuesday, she wrote, "Does this place actually exist, or were you trying to sound interesting?" I replied, "I don't try to sound interesting. It creates expectations." Good. Thursday. That was how our first date happened without either of us calling it a date. I arrived a few minutes early and still found her already sitting near the front window. She wore a denim jacket over a dark dress and had one hand wrapped around a plain black coffee. "You look disappointed," she said as I walked over. "I thought I was early." "You were." "I was earlier." "That feels competitive." "It is." I ordered the same coffee she had. She watched me take the first sip. "You don't drink it like that." "I do now." "No, you don't." I set the cup down. "How can you possibly know that?" "You made the face people make when they realize confidence has consequences." I went back to the counter and added cream. When I returned, she nodded. Much more honest. Talking to Mira felt easy in a way that made me slightly suspicious. Usually, when I met someone new, I spent half the conversation deciding what to say next. With her, one subject kept leading into another. She told me about working at a lodge in New Mexico, where guests asked questions she could not answer and expected her to know every hiking trail within 50 miles. She had worked early mornings at a bakery in Oregon, then spent a season at a guest ranch in Colorado. "What did you do there?" I asked. "Whatever needed doing. Check-ins, schedules, supplies, calming people down when their vacation didn't look like the pictures." "So you were basically a dispatcher. With horses nearby?" "That sounds better." It smelled worse. She smiled and took another drink. I asked how long she had been back in Chattanooga. "A few weeks." "Staying long." "That's the current experiment." She said it casually, but I could tell the question mattered. "What brought you back?" "Family. Old things. Nothing dramatic enough for a documentary." The answer was light, but the boundary was clear. I nodded and left it alone. She seemed relieved that I did not ask again. After coffee, neither of us moved toward our cars. We started walking instead, first through the nearby streets and then toward the river. The weather was cool enough for jackets, but not uncomfortable. Runners passed us in pairs. A man near the path tried to convince his dog to stop staring at a food truck. Mira asked how long I had known the friend who dragged me to the party. "Since high school." "That's a long time." "We worked at the same grocery store." Derek got written up during his first week because he gave away free cookies. "Why?" "He said the samples were too small." "That sounds generous." "He gave away the whole tray to his friends." "That sounds less generous." I told her about the trivia team Derek once created without checking whether any of us knew anything useful. We finished near the bottom because he insisted on answering every sports question, including the ones about sports he never watched. Mira slowed slightly. "What's his last name?" I told her. For half a second, something changed in her expression. It was small. Her eyebrows lifted, then settled again. I noticed it, but I thought she was reacting to the story. She asked, "You two are still close?" "Unfortunately. You say that like he isn't the reason we met." "Never encourage Derek. He becomes impossible." She looked toward the river. "Right," she said. I did not know it then, but that was the moment she understood exactly who I was. She already knew I was Derek's best friend. She knew I had been in and out of her parents' house for years. She knew that one simple sentence would have changed the entire conversation. But she did not say it. We kept walking. At the end of the afternoon, she asked whether I always pretended not to enjoy being around people. "Only when I've been forced outside." "So this is still part of your 1-hour obligation?" "I think the obligation ended several days ago." "Good." She smiled, and I forgot everything except the fact that I wanted to see her again. We met one more time that weekend for lunch. Then we exchanged messages late into the evening on Sunday. Nothing moved fast, but it was moving. A few days later, Derek asked me to come by his parents' house to help move a table from the garage. I entered through the side door without knocking, the same way I had for years. "I'm here," I called. No answer came from the kitchen. Then I turned the corner and saw Mira drying dishes beside Derek's mother. She looked completely different from the woman on the side porch, not because of what she wore, but because she belonged there. A family photograph hung behind her. Her mother was talking to her like they had been standing in that kitchen together for years. Mira looked up. Her hand stopped moving. I stopped too. Derek came in from the dining room, carrying a plate of food. "There you are," he said. Then he looked between us. "Seth, you remember my sister Mira. She's back in town for a while." For a second, nobody spoke. Then Derek smiled. "Wait, you two met at the party, didn't you?" Mira set the dish towel down carefully. "Yes," she said. Derek laughed. "That's great. I didn't even realize it was her you were talking to." I looked at Mira. The surprise on her face was not the same as mine. She already knew. That part was obvious. Dinner happened because leaving immediately would have turned the room into a scene. Derek talked about work. His father complained about a repair estimate. His mother asked me whether I was eating enough vegetables. Mira stayed calm. I answered questions and barely heard myself. Every few minutes, our eyes met across the table. After dinner, Derek and his parents stepped into the living room to look at something on television. I stayed in the kitchen. Mira stayed too. "When did you know?" I asked quietly. She did not pretend to misunderstand. "During our walk. When you said Derek's full name." "So before lunch?" "Yes." "And before all those messages?" "Yes." I looked toward the doorway, making sure nobody was coming back. "Why didn't you tell me?" She crossed her arms, then lowered them again. "Because you met me without knowing anything about my family. You didn't see Derek's sister or the person who left town. You just saw me. I understand why that felt good. But you let me keep talking without information that might have mattered." She nodded. "I know. You decided for me." I did. There was no excuse in her voice, which somehow made it harder to stay angry. "I was going to tell you," she said. "When—" She did not answer quickly enough. I picked up my jacket from the back of a chair. "Seth, I'm not doing this here." I walked out through the side door. Derek called after me from the living room, but I told him I had forgotten something at home. For the next 10 days, I did what I always did when life became complicated. I avoided it. 10 days passed without me contacting Mira. That sounds like a decision. It was mostly avoidance with a calendar attached. I still saw Derek. We watched a game at his apartment, argued about a referee, and ordered food from the same place we always used. He had no idea I had met his sister twice, liked her more than I should have, and left his parents' house feeling deceived. I told myself there was no reason to mention it because I had ended things. The problem was that nothing had actually ended. I checked my phone more often. I reread old messages. Every time Derek mentioned his family, I became very interested in whatever was happening on television. On the 11th night, Mira wrote, "I finally played the bridge without stopping. Mostly." She had mentioned learning guitar during one of our long conversations. She said she always stopped when she made a mistake, went back to the beginning, then became annoyed and put the guitar away. I stared at her message for several minutes before answering. "Mostly is how all healthy relationships begin." Her reply came quickly. "Are we discussing the guitar, or you in good judgment?" That was how we started talking again. Carefully at first. She told me she had an interview at a small bookstore cafe. The job included serving coffee, organizing inventory, helping with evening events, and posting online without making the store sound desperate. "I think I can manage that," she wrote. Can you arrange books alphabetically? I've moved across 4 states. I can locate the letter M. A few days later, we met at the coffee shop again. Neither of us called it a date. Mira sat across from me with both hands around her cup. I'm sorry, she said. Not in a way that asks you to pretend it didn't matter. I knew who you were, and I kept it from you because I liked being someone without a family explanation attached. I understand why. That doesn't make it fair. No. She nodded. I know. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I felt worse because she was making it difficult to stay angry. I haven't told Derek anything, I admitted. Her expression changed. So you're doing your own version of the same thing. I'm not continuing to lie. You watched a game with him 2 days ago. I looked at her. How do you know that? He told our mother you complained about the referee for an hour. It was a bad call. That isn't the important part. She was right, which became an irritating pattern. We left the cafe agreeing that we would be honest from then on. That agreement lasted in theory much longer than it lasted in practice. We began meeting in small ways. A walk near the river, lunch during my break, 20 minutes outside the bookstore after her interview, a Saturday market where she bought a plant and spent the rest of the morning asking whether it looked disappointed in her. She got the bookstore job. Then she found an apartment above an old furniture repair shop that had been closed for years. The floors leaned slightly, the radiator made noises without warning, and one kitchen drawer opened only if you lifted it first. Mira loved it. It's imperfect, she said, standing beside one of the tall windows. But I chose it. I helped carry boxes upstairs. She owned fewer things than anyone I knew. Clothes, kitchen supplies, a guitar, several plants, and a small collection of books. During a walk by the river, I took her hand. She looked down at our joined hands, then at me. Neither of us pulled away. Neither of us mentioned Derek for almost a full minute. We need to tell him, she finally said. I know. We kept walking with our hands together. A week later, Mira bought a used bookshelf online. The seller described it as solid wood and easy to move. Only the first part was true. The shelf barely fit through the entrance to her building. We carried it up one narrow flight at a time, stopping whenever one of us lost grip. Lift your side, I said. I am lifting my side. Then why is my side getting heavier? Because your side lacks confidence. By the time we reached the apartment, my arms were shaking. We set the shelf against the wall and discovered one leg was shorter than the others. Mira folded cardboard and pushed it underneath. The bookshelf still leaned slightly. It has character, she said. It has a structural opinion. It's my first serious adult furniture. You own 6 books. I intend to grow into it. Afterward, we sat in her small kitchen drinking water from mismatched mugs. She wore jeans, a light shirt, and gray socks. I had left my shoes near the door and was also in socks, because the wooden floors had recently been cleaned and Mira had threatened me with permanent removal if I marked them. She watched me over the rim of her mug. Our attempt to behave sensibly is failing, she said. I noticed. Are we still deciding what this is? I think we made that decision emotionally a while ago. She set the mug down. And Derek. The name changed the room. We tell him before this goes any further, I said. I don't want him finding out by accident. Should I tell him first? Maybe I should. Or together. That might make this look more serious than it is. Mira raised an eyebrow. You carried a bookshelf up a staircase for me. I make poor choices under pressure. She smiled, but the tension stayed. Then she leaned toward me. I met her halfway. The kiss was slow and careful, with enough time for either of us to stop. Neither did. Afterward, we sat on the floor near the crooked bookshelf. We have to tell him soon, she said. I know. But then we debated who should speak first, where it should happen, and how much we should explain. We turned delay into a planning process and called it responsibility. Several days later, Mira came to my apartment with takeout. Her jacket rested on a chair. Her shoes were near the door. A guitar pick she carried in her pocket sat on my coffee table beside 2 plates and 2 glasses. We were on the couch when someone knocked. I opened the door. Derek stood there holding a pack of drinks. He looked past me and saw Mira. Then he noticed everything else. His face became still. How long? He asked. Mira stood up. A little while. We were going to tell you, I said. Derek looked directly at me. When? Neither of us answered. He placed the drinks on the table beside the door. He did not raise his voice. He did not tell Mira what she could or could not do. He did not threaten me. He simply looked at both of us as though we had moved somewhere without telling him. Then he turned and walked away. For the next week, Derek disappeared from the small parts of my life. No random calls during work. No messages about a game I was already watching. No picture of a terrible parking job with no explanation. I had never realized how often he interrupted my day until he stopped. I sent one message. Call me when you can. He did not answer. I told myself I was giving him space. Mira called it what it was. We were sitting in her apartment while she practiced guitar. She reached the same difficult section, missed a chord, and stopped. Then she looked at me. You do this too. I don't play guitar. You stop every time the song reaches the part you might play badly. I sent him a message. You sent him 6 words. He knows what they mean. They mean you want him to do the difficult part. That irritated me because it was accurate. That night, I wrote Derek again. This time I did not hide inside a vague sentence. I told him I was not sorry for caring about Mira. I was sorry I had hidden it. I was sorry he had learned by walking into my apartment and seeing that both of us had already built a situation around him. I should have spoken to him before the first kiss, not after weeks of delay. He had deserved honesty before the relationship became something established. I ended by saying I would be available whenever he chose to speak. I did not ask him to forgive me. Mira called him separately the next day. She told him the full timeline, including the part where she learned who I was before I knew who she was. She admitted she had continued meeting me because she liked being seen without the family history attached. She also admitted that once the truth came out, she had helped delay the next conversation. When the call ended, she sat beside me on the couch. He said you should have told him directly. He's right. I told him that. Derek still did not contact me. Another week passed. On Friday evening, I went to the neighborhood sports bar where we usually watched games. I did not know whether Derek would be there. I ordered food, took a seat at the counter, and tried to look like a man who had not chosen his location for one very specific reason. 20 minutes later, Derek sat on the stool beside me. He did not greet me. For several minutes, we watched the game. Finally, he said, Mira explained the timeline. I nodded. I believe you didn't know at the party. I didn't. That doesn't fix the rest. I know. He kept watching the screen. It wasn't just that you were seeing my sister, he said. She makes her own decisions. I'm not choosing for her. I waited. It was walking into your place and realizing both of you already expected me to be upset. You had this whole private thing going, and I was outside it. You talked to me almost every day while hiding something that changed my family and my closest friendship at the same time. There was no useful excuse. I told myself I was avoiding a problem, I said. Really, I was protecting myself from one uncomfortable conversation. Derek looked at me then. That's exactly what you did. I'm sorry. He looked back at the game. After a while, he said Mira had seemed different since coming home. Before, she had looked ready to leave again whenever anyone asked about her plans. Now she had accepted the bookstore job, rented her own place, practiced guitar, and made decisions without waiting for the family to approve them. That isn't all because of you, he said. I know, but she doesn't seem smaller around you. I understood that was the closest thing to approval I was going to receive. Then he pointed at me. Don't treat her like some interesting thing that happened because I forced you to attend a party. I don't see her as something I found at a party, I said. I see her as someone I chose badly at first and want to treat better now. Derek studied me for a moment. Then he signaled for another round and said, You're buying. We returned to the game. Nothing was completely repaired, but the door was open. I went to Myra's apartment afterward. She was waiting near the crooked bookshelf, still supported by folded cardboard. How bad? She asked. He's still hurt. She nodded. But he believes the first meeting was innocent. He's willing to rebuild. Her shoulders relaxed. That isn't forgiveness, she said. No, but it's something. She picked up the guitar and sat in the chair near the window. I'm going to try the whole song. She started slowly. The first section went well. Then she missed a chord and paused. I expected her to apologize or start again. She kept going. The rhythm became uneven. One transition sounded rough. Near the end, she hesitated so long I thought she had stopped. Then she played the final section and finished. She looked at me. I said, You finished. That mattered more to her than me pretending it had been perfect. Over the next few months, Mira settled into the bookstore cafe. She arranged a small local music evening, though she refused to perform. Her apartment gained more plants, more mugs, and enough books to make the crooked shelf look intentional. I started leaving my apartment without Derek having to argue with me first. Derek and I rebuilt our friendship slowly. Some conversations felt normal. Others had a careful space inside them. Trust did not return because we had one honest talk. It returned in pieces because we stopped avoiding the next one. The three of us eventually went to trivia night together. We lost after Derek rejected Myra's correct answer and replaced it with one he claimed felt more likely. You always do this, I told him. That is not true. You once answered a question about the moon with Florida. It was badly worded. Myra looked at me. You've known him this long voluntarily? Most of it. Later that evening, we went back to her apartment. The bookshelf was still slightly uneven and only partly full. Her guitar rested beside it. I sat on the floor while she played the same song again. It still was not perfect. She did not stop. When she finished, she rested her hand on the strings. Do you regret going to that party? I still think the party was terrible. And meeting me? That was the part worth staying for. Honesty did not erase what our delay had done. It simply gave us a way to continue without pretending the wrong notes had never happened.